The human race concerns me, and everything that implies, which is the most ambitious thing you can say, and at the same time the most modest, too, because I can't think of anything that people do where conflict is born. It isn't dramatically interesting. And, of course, it's the role of the dramatist to select which part is most interesting.
Yeah, I'm a man.
How you gonna feel on the inside?
I'm gonna feel fine.
You won't have nothing left.
I'm gonna feel fine. I looked that man right in his eye. All right, Mr. Charlie. All right, Mr. Lindler. That's your neighborhood out there. You want to keep it that way? You got a right to keep it that way. Just give me that money, and the house is yours. And I'll feel fine. Fine. I'll say more than that. I'll say you give me that money, and you won't have to live next door to no bunch of stinking...
Walter.
I'll feel fine. Maybe I'll get down on my black knees. All right, Mr. Charlie. All right, Mr. Great White Father. You just give us that money, and we won't come out there and dirty up your white folks' neighborhood. And I'll feel fine. Fine. Fine.
Attracted to a medium where not only do you get to do what we do in life every day, talk to people, but to be very selective about the nature of the conversation. It's an opportunity to treat character in the most absolute relief, one against the other, so that everything, sympathy and conflict, is played so sharply, even a little more than a novel. And I suppose it's my own private sense of drama that makes that appeal to me.
A desire to talk to people?
A desire to talk to people and to, I suppose, also have them do what you want them to do, ultimately.
Your character.
Yes.
Lorraine Hansberry at 29. A TV interview with the author of A Raisin in the Sun, the first black playwright to win the New York Drama Critics Circle Award for the best play of the year. In 5 years, she would be dead of cancer at the age of 34. But the play and playwright would continue to have a profound impact on the American theater. Who was this remarkable young woman? How did she come to transform the black experience into the art of drama? She was born and grew up in South Side Chicago in the 1930s. Her formative years shaped by the ghetto. Her father was a federal marshal who became a successful businessman. He once ran for Congress as a Republican in the middle of the Depression and lost. Lorraine was the youngest of 4 children in a closely knit family. Her parents tried to instill in their children 2 values: pride in the family, never betray the race.
I've tried to explain this to people. I've come from an extremely comfortable background, materially speaking, and yet we live in a ghetto, which automatically means intimacy with all classes and all kinds of experiences. It's not any more difficult for me to know the people that I wrote about than it is for me to know members of my family, because there is that kind of intimacy. This is one of the things that the American experience has meant to Negroes. We are one people.
In her play, A Raisin in the Sun, Lorraine has a working-class family faced with the decision of whether to move into a new home in a white neighborhood. But 20 years before, in real life, the Hansberry family faced a similar decision.
My father put a great deal of money, a great deal of his really extraordinary talents into everything that we say is the American way, as to say that he moved his family into a restricted area where no Negroes were supposed to live, and then proceeded to fight the case all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, when it eventually resulted in a decision against restrictive covenants, which is the very famous Hansberry versus Lee.
For 8-year-old Lorraine, this experience would prove unforgettable. In her writings, she told how she had to undergo taunts and slurs from threatening mobs, and how her parents patrolled the apartment at night with a loaded gun. At one point, a brick crashed through this window, narrowly missing young Lorraine. Important in the development of Lorraine Hansberry were the close relationships she established with kids from the black working class. Kids who came to school with house keys around their necks, wore pegged pants, tight skirts, and anklets held up by rubber bands. Kids, she said, who did more things and laughed longer and harder than anyone else, and who, above all, were not afraid to fight. Years later, she was to comment in her writings on their influence. The world, in fact, is divided in half as it is lived by me. There are those who think me the liveliest of types, the chattering, guitar-playing, slow-drag dancing, guzzling figure of Renaissance well-being. And still, there are the others, those latter-day images of the children of my youth who found me curious then, and still do. A serious, art-talking kid who could neither jump double-dutch nor understand their games, but who classically envied them, and their costumes, and the things that somehow gave them joy. They never understood or believed my envy, and they never will. Questionnaire. What was your first contact with Shakespeare? Answer. Inglewood High. We had to memorize speeches from Macbeth and Julius Caesar, all for a strange and bewigged teacher whom we called Pale Hecate. God rest her gentle, enraptured, and igniting soul. Question. How did you decide to be a playwright? Looking back, it was always a difficult question for Lorraine. She didn't really know, except there was the University of Wisconsin, and the memory of the time she walked in on a rehearsal of Sean O'Casey's play, Juno and the Paycock, and heard a mother's lament for her son killed in the Irish struggle for freedom. Lorraine wrote about it in these words. I remember being in the orchestra close to the stage. There are always memories of things one has first experienced in the theater which seem out of context to the viewer. Who can understand the significance of a memory of an anguished wail of poetry that once consumed my senses when I was 17? The woman's voice, the howl, the shriek of misery that summoned up all of my awareness of human pain and endurance and the futility of it. Oh, Blessed Virgin, where were you when my darling son was riddled with bullets? Sacred Heart of the crucified Jesus, take away our hearts of stone and give us hearts of flesh. Take away this murder and hate and give us thine own eternal love. And the wail rose and hummed through the tenements, through Dublin, through Ireland itself, and then mingled with seas and became something born of the Irish wail that was all of us. I remember sitting there stunned with a melody that I thought might have been sung in a different meter. It seemed to me then, as it does now, the essence of a melody that I had known for a very long while. I was 17, and I did not think then of writing the melody, as I knew it in a different key. But I believed it entered my consciousness and stayed there. She was leaving the university in her sophomore year to pursue, as she said, an education of another kind. She was going to New York, where there was a flourishing theater and the great Harlem community to identify with and draw strength from. It was here she would find the answers to the questions. Who am I? What do I want to do with my life? The year was 1950. She got a job for $31.70 a week as a reporter, and soon became associate editor of the radical black newspaper Freedom, published by the world-famous artist Paul Robeson. And she studied African history with the distinguished scholar W.E.B. Du Bois, father of Pan-Africanism. She plunged into the peace and civil rights movements of the day, marched on picket lines, and spoke on street corners. It was on one of these occasions that she met and later married Robert Nemiroff, a writer who shared her social commitment. Meanwhile, she was writing newspaper articles, going to plays, and reading everything she could get her hands on. And she often found herself wandering the Harlem streets in wonder, making entries in a journal, drinking in the sights and sounds, the laughter, the brooding anger and the will to live of her people. My work, she wrote, my work. So many truths seem to be rushing at me as the result of things felt and seen and lived through. Oh, what I think I must tell this world. Oh, the time that I crave and the peace and the power. I am a writer. I am going to write. A young wife in Greenwich Village, working part-time as a waitress, writing a play at night. She had announced to her husband that she was going to write an honest play about black people. For the title, she turned to a poem by the black poet, Langston Hughes. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? What Langston Hughes had achieved in transforming the black experience into poetry, she would do with drama. In a letter to her mother, she wrote, "Mama, it is a play that tells the truth about people, Negroes and life, and I think it will help a lot of people to understand that we have among our downtrodden ranks people who are the very essence of human dignity. That is what, after all, the laughter and the tears the play is supposed to say." For the theme and characters of her play, she went back in memory to the scenes of her youth in South Side Chicago.
One of the most sound ideas in dramatic writing is that in order to create the universal, you must pay very great attention to the specific. Universality, I think, emerges from truthful identity of what is. In other words, I've told people that not only is this a Negro family, specifically and definitely, culturally, but it's not even a New York family or a Southern Negro family. It is specifically South Side Chicago. In other words, I think people, to the extent they accept them and believe them as who they're supposed to be, to that extent they can become everybody.
A play born of the black experience. A play about the author herself in the form of the young daughter, Benita.
I enjoyed making fun of this girl, who is myself, 8 years ago. I enjoyed making fun of her because I have that kind of confidence about what she represents. I'm not worried about her. She's precocious. She's outspoken. She's everything, which tends to be comic and, people sigh with her and they have one at home like that, and they enjoy her for this reason. But I also feel that she doesn't have a word in the play that I don't agree with still today. I would say it differently today.
Benny! Who are you going out with tomorrow night?
George Murchison again.
Oh, you get a little sweet on him, huh?
You asked me to tell ain't sweet on nobody but ourselves. Oh, I like George all right, Mama. I mean, I like him enough to go out with him and stuff, but...
Well, what does them stuff mean?
Mind your own business.
No, now stop picking on him now, Ruth. What does it mean?
You mean you wouldn't marry George Murchison even if he asked you to someday? That's pretty rich, there. Honey, I knew you was odd.
What are you talking about? Listen, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm not worried about who I'm going to marry yet. If I ever get married.
Yes. Oh, now, Benny, all young girls been in college.
But first I'm going to be a doctor. Now, George, for one, still thinks that's pretty funny. I couldn't be bothered with that. I'm going to be a doctor. And everybody around here better understand that.
Of course you're going to be a doctor, honey, God willing.
God hasn't got a thing to do with it.
Benita, that just wasn't necessary.
Well, Mama, neither is God. I get sick of hearing about God.
Benita!
Mama, I mean that. Now, I'm just tired of hearing about God all the time. What has he got to do with anything? Does he pay tuition?
You about to get your fresh little jaw slapped.
It's just what you need, all right? Why? Now, why can't I say what I want to say around here like everybody else?
Because it don't sound nice for a young girl to be talking like that. You wasn't brought up that way. Me and your daddy went to the trouble to get you and brother to church every Sunday.
me.
You don't understand.
You bet I
Now,
don't.
you see, it's all a matter of ideas, and God is just one idea that I don't accept. It's not important. I'm not going to go out and be immoral or commit crimes because I don't believe in God. I don't even think about that. It's just that I get so tired of him getting the credit for all the things that the human race achieves through its own stubborn efforts. Now, there simply is no blasted God. There's only man. And it's he who makes miracles.
Say after me. In my mother's house there is still God. In my mother's house there is still God.
In my mother's house is still God.
There's just some things we ain't gonna have around here. Not long as I'm still head of this family.
Yes, ma'am.
Opening night is a success. Sidney Poitier leads Lorraine on stage to the cheers of the audience. It's a hit. Like it or not, Lorraine is an instant celebrity.
What about success, this little goddess success? What does it do to you? And you can...
It's wonderful. I'm enjoying it. For the time being, I'm enjoying every bit of it. I've tried to go to everything I was invited to. But I don't have the right to be very personal about the reception to this play. I think what it reflects at this moment is that at this particular moment in our country, there's a new mood. And they're feeling like make new sounds. And I'm glad I was here to make one, you know.
Lorraine, you said in an interview, I think, that you wrote A Raisin in the Sun from a specific intellectual point of view.
Yes, I happen to believe that the most ordinary human being, to almost repeat what I just said, has within him elements of profundity, of profound anguish, that there is, you don't have to go to the kings and queens of the earth. I think the Greeks and the Elizabethans did this because it was a logical concept, but every human being is in enormous conflict about something, even if it's how you get to work in the morning and all of that. So that I thought that it would be very interesting in the contemporary American theatrical moment to explore the most ordinary man, say, on the south side of Chicago, who we think we know. You know, he drives you to work and you say, well, he's a nice fellow. But see what he's like at home in some of the ordinary events by the time he gets to work. He's a complicated and large person.
Mama, I want so many things. I want so many things that sometimes I think they're going to drive me crazy. See, I'm 35 years old, and I ain't got nothing. I ain't going to be nothing, Mama. Just look at me. Look at me.
I'm looking at you. And you're a good-looking boy. You got a job, a fine wife, a son.
A job. Now, I open and close car doors all day. I drive a man around in his limousine, and I say, yes, sir, and no, sir. And shall I take the drive, sir? Mama, that ain't no job. That ain't nothing at all. I don't even know if I can make you understand.
Understand what, baby?
Well, sometimes it's like I can see my future just stretched out in front of me, my whole future. A big, blank, empty space full of nothing, just hanging at the edge of my days waiting for me. But it don't have to be. Sometimes when I'm downtown driving that man around, we pass them cool, quiet-looking restaurants. I look in. I see these white boys. They sit talking about deals worth millions of dollars, Mama, and half the time they don't look no older than me.
Oh, son, how come you talk so much about money?
Because it's life.
Oh, so now money is life. Once upon a time, freedom used to be life, but now it's money.
Mama, it was always money. We just didn't know it.
No. Something's changed. You're something new, boy. In my time, we was worried about not being lynched and getting to the north and how to stay alive and still have a pinch of dignity, too. Now here come you and Benita talking about things we ain't hardly ever thought about, me and your daddy. You ain't satisfied or proud of nothing we done. I mean that you had a home and that we kept you out of trouble till you was grown. And that you don't have to ride to work on the back of nobody's streetcar. You're my children, but how different we've become.
In terms of a statement, I think what the play tries to say is that we really don't have very much in the world at all if we allow any aspect of money values to transcend the requirements that are necessary for human dignity.
An early proponent of women's liberation, Lorraine analyzed the role of the mother in her play.
Lena Younger, the mother, is the black matriarch incarnate, the bulwark of the Negro family since slavery, the embodiment of the Negro will to transcendence. It is she who, in the mind of the black poet, scrubs the floors of a nation in order to create black diplomats and university professors. It is she, while seeming to cling to traditional restraints, drives the young on into the fire hoses, and one day simply refuses to move to the back of the bus in Montgomery, and goes out and buys a house in an all-white neighborhood where her children may possibly be killed by bricks thrown through the windows of a shrieking racist mom. I'm saying that the mother is an idealization which was put into my consciousness over 20 years ago. Old washwoman Langston Hughes had written of the black domestic. Arms wash clean, soul wash clean.
Would you call Raisin in the Sun a naturalistic play?
I would not.
And what would you call it if you had to put a label
I hope that it is genuine realism.
What's the difference?
It's enormously different. Well, naturalism tends to take the world as it is and say, this is what it is, this is how it happens. It is true because we see it every day in life that way. You know, you simply photograph the garbage can.
Mm-hmm.
And realism, I think the artist who is creating the realistic work imposes on it not only what is, but what is possible, because this is part of reality, too, so that you get a much larger potential of what man can do, and requires much greater selectivity. You don't just put everything that seems, you put what you believe is.
In this framework, would you call Shakespeare a realistic writer?
The greatest of them all. This is why I love Sean O'Casey. This, to me, is the playwright of the 20th century accepting and using the most obvious instruments of Shakespeare, which is the human personality in its totality. Realism demands the imposition of a point of view, and the point of view of O'Casey is always the wonder of the nobility of people.
Lorraine Hansberry had a profound faith in mankind. It was at the core of what motivated her as an artist. In a speech to black writers, she said, "I wish to live because life has within it that which is good, that which is beautiful, and that which is love. Therefore, since I have known all these things, I have found them to be reason enough, and I wish to live. Moreover, because this is so, I wish others to live for generations and generations and generations." Croton-on-the-Hudson, a new home, place to relax and think and write. She was already hard at work on several new plays. Of course, there was an occasional interruption as captured on this home movie. There was another side to Lorraine. From her early stick figure drawing in her elementary school graduation book to the caricature she drew of herself as a writer, we see a capacity for a certain self-humor in an intensely proud woman. But she could also be as serious about her drawings and sketches as she was about her plays. A writer must not only write, but act. And so, even though Lorraine was a successful author, she still remained a committed individual and found the time to participate and play a leading role in the growing peace and civil rights movement of the 60s. The book, The Movement, is perhaps her testament to this time.
There is really very limited expression in literature which is not protest, be it black, white, or what have you. I can't imagine a contemporary writer any place in the world today who isn't in conflict with his world. Personally, I can't imagine a time in the world when the artist wasn't in conflict. If he was any kind of an artist, he had to be.
And what of her other writings during this period? How were they progressing? From jottings in her date books, we can put together a portrait of the artist at work in a period of failing health. September 16, 1962. I sit at this desk for hours and sharpen pencils and smoke cigarettes and switch from play to play. Sidney Brewstein, Toussaint, Les Blancs, and nothing happens. I begin to think more and more of doing something else with my life while I'm still young. Anything, instead of this endless struggle. October 11th, 1962. The magic has come. About an hour ago. It came all at once while I was in the kitchen. 14 pages of dialogue. Thank God. Thank God. April 12th, 1963. Had some weird attack. Almost conked out. Sick girl. Hospital on the 20th. January 1st, 1964. The work goes superbly. Sidney Brewstein. Only death or infirmity can stop me now. A new tape recorder comes into the house. Lorraine makes a recording.
My Lord, he calls me. He calls me by the thunder. And the trumpet sounds within my soul. And I ain't got long to stay. Steal away. Steal away, steal away to Jesus. Steal away home. I ain't got long to stay here.
On October 15th, 1964, Lorraine Hansberry's second play opened on Broadway. To almost everyone's surprise, America's foremost black dramatist had not focused upon black life. She had written of the people she knew in Greenwich Village, artists, writers, intellectuals. It was a play about corruption and commitment, and the need in an age of cynicism to take a stand. Lorraine attended the opening performance, but 2 days later she returned to the hospital for a case of terminal cancer. The play received mixed reviews, and its future was almost immediately in doubt. But then a remarkable thing happened. Her fellow artists and friends, out of love for the play and respect for Lorraine, organized a spontaneous campaign to keep it going. The closing was scheduled several times, but somehow they wouldn't let it die. The continuance of the play became linked to the life of Lorraine, now in a coma in the hospital. On January 12th, 1965, Lorraine Hansberry died at the age of 34. On that day, after 101 performances, the play closed. Lorraine Hansberry once wrote that the supreme test of an artist is the ability to render the infinite varieties of the human spirit, which invariably hangs between despair and joy. It was this insight which she brought to the black experience, as reflected in a poem she wrote about her people. Sometimes in this country, maybe just walking down a South Side street, or maybe suddenly up in a Harlem window, or maybe in a flash turning the page of one of those picture books from the South, you will see it. Beauty, stark and full. No part of something this, but rather Africa, simply Africa. These thighs and arms and flying winged cheekbones, these hallowed eyes without negation or apology. But classical people demand a classical heart. It is this sensitivity to the black experience and the African heritage which has enabled Lorraine's plays to survive beyond her death. In her play, Les Blancs, which was produced to critical acclaim, she turned her prophetic gaze to the coming struggle for liberation in Africa, when at last the positions of all, black and white, oppressed and oppressor, would have to be faced.
Thank you, Mr. Morris.
Come on.
on. Stop this Mr. Morris stuff. Call me Charlie, and I'll call you, Shembe?
No.
What?
I said no. I prefer to be addressed formally. And if we are going to change it, you will not decide alone. We will hold a referendum, which includes me.
You can't get rid of it, can you? The bitterness. You hate the whole white race.
Dear God, why? Why do you all need it so? This absolute longing for my hatred. I shall be honest with you, Morris. I do not hate all white men, but I desperately wish that I did. It would make everything infinitely easier. But I am afraid that, among other things, I have seen the slums of Liverpool and Dublin and the caves above Naples and too many pop-eyed Italian children. I have seen Dachau and Anne Frank's attic in Amsterdam. I have seen too many raw-knuckled Frenchmen coming out of the metro at dawn to believe that those who raided Africa for 3 centuries ever loved the white race either. I would like to be simple-minded for you, Mr. Morris, but I cannot. I have seen.
Lorraine Hansberry had seen, long and far, another play, To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. A portrait of Lorraine in her own words has had hundreds of productions throughout the country and has been adapted for television, records, and film. The title itself has now become part of the language. As for A Raisin in the Sun, it has been translated and staged in 30 different languages and has had thousands of productions across the country. It has undergone a fascinating metamorphosis, from prize-winning play to award-winning motion picture.
Yeah, that's my man, you know, Kenyatta. Damn. Famous.
And once again, it has emerged in a new form, the musical Raisin, winner of Tony and Grammy Awards as Broadway's best musical. Lorraine is still very much with us.
I suppose I think that the highest gift that man has is art. And I am audacious enough to think of myself as an artist. There is both joy and beauty and illumination and communion between people to be achieved through the dissection of personality. That's what I want to do. I want to reach a little closer to the world, which is to say to people, and see if we can share some illuminations together about each other.